Hey everyone, and welcome to the Steel Toe Leadership Podcast. Today we have Wendy Wiesman, and Wendy is going to tell us all about her journey into becoming the leader that she is today. Wendy, how are you doing for real today?
I mean, I'm pretty fabulous if I'm being honest.
Well, that's good. That's what we want. So we're going to kick off with kind of the quick and dirty. So who are you? What do you do? Where are you from? We'll dig a little bit more into your life story, but this is like the high level, who are you?
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Thank you for having me, by the way.
Oh, thanks for being here.
Today, I am the CEO and founder of Ready Set Pivot, an organization designed to help women find their what's next, whatever that is for them.
Mm-hmm.
I got here a little unexpectedly, and by a little, I mean a lot. I'm a recovering corporate marketer, which I like to share with many people. Marketing is still in my blood, and I get to exercise those skills every day as a part of the business that I run. 1,000%. I couldn't do it if I didn't have that background. But my passion really is driving women forward, kicking their ass, and helping them get what they need because women just should get more. We give out so much, we should get more.
I feel like you've said that a few times. It's kind of like it's like the creme de la creme of the story, right? So before we dig into RSP, I want to hear kind of your origin story. And so I mentioned, I want to know all the things that I kind of prefaced our interview earlier. When we're talking about leadership, I think it's so important to understand how leaders got to where they are right now, right? Because most of us, we don't get there. We don't wake up, at the age of 10 and say, you know what, someday I want to be a leader. You know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to do this, this, and this. It never turns out that that's your actual life path. And so I think it's fascinating to hear kind of the path that we took to get there. Start us out with where you grew up and what life was like, and then take us into your career.
Awesome. I'm a small town Scotty girl. So grew up in that town of 1,500, a graduating class, Christina, of 50.
I graduated with 900 and something.
So if you have 50, it makes it really easy to graduate in the top 10.
Yeah.
But then you have an inflated sense of achievement because you're like, I graduated in the top 10, but that's not that cool if there's only
Obviously,
50
I'm
people in
insanely
the top
smart.
10.
Everybody should listen to me.
Right. So small town growing up is a really nurturing environment. Lots of, it's really weird, but lots of really amazing leaders around me in the community. And so while we might not wake up that way, I feel like when we're 10, as you said, I feel like seeing those examples early on in my formative years was really meaningful for me in ways that today I still think about.
So when you're just
Yeah.
to take a little side thing, so when you're talking about your leaders that you saw growing up, what kind of roles were those people in that you reflect on? What were in your mind, the leaders?
Yeah. They were leaders in the community or at my workplace. So I worked at the Bank of Edgar as a teller. There were women around me who taught me how to, do better work. There were leaders at my school. I think about the coaches and the men that were traditional leaders in those spaces and places that were in a position of authority, sure. But I also think in hindsight now, when I look back to it, how they led, how they're some of the coolest leaders, throughout my whole career, right? Because when we're in corporate, there's some pretty shitty leaders. And now, you really know the difference. You don't know the difference when you're in high school as well, I feel like. So I think that was pretty amazing. And it was amazing to be insulated in a small community in that way.
Got it. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. I think that, what's interesting about saying, did we wake up, in 10 and say, I want to lead? No, but I do feel like a leader has always been within me. So are you a leader that's born or are you made? I think it is inherent for me to lead a room, try to solve a problem. That's always been part of my DNA. And then that showed up throughout my career and ended me up in chairs and places that I probably wasn't planning on, which as a planner, I hate to confess, but is really the truth.
Yeah, no, we can't plan the best things that happen to in our life. So tell me, so you got through your small town, you went to high school, graduated high school, did all those things, and then what was after high school for you?
It was college. of course, the traditional Gen Xer off to college, I did have to ask our guidance counselor to plan a trip, though, to go see colleges. So I'm University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, blue gold, advertising major, art minor. All of those things still work really well for me today. And after college, I moved to the Twin Cities. It was either the Twin Cities or Chicago. And I've been here ever since. And
I'm
so,
so glad you
well,
are.
I know, right? I mean, Chicago could have happened. It just, it didn't. I do love the pace and the momentum of a big city. So
Mhm.
I took a job as a marketing assistant at Prudential, helped those financial advisors get their first 200 clients. Then I went to TCF Bank. I audited every bank in the Twin Cities. So I've been to every, what is now Huntington branch that exists, brick and mortar. Learned a lot in that corporate environment, of course. From there, I moved on to Liberty Harlan check printing, the exciting world of checks. But
So
it was really,
you were like all financial for a while
so I'm
there.
on financial services and healthcare. So highly regulated. People would often say to me, I don't really understand what you're doing here. And I'm like, I know, like, I get it. Like, you don't
I get
seem to
that too.
like I wanted out of college, the big enamoring thing was to be on the ad agency side of the business with an advertising major.
Mhm.
But if you don't step in there right away, then that industry doesn't give you the authority, I think, really to switch and pivot between those until you get enough category experience that then the agency can leverage for their own growth and gain. And so I
Right.
was client side and have been client side my entire career up until founding the startup.
Does that bother you that you didn't go to that
Yeah,
agency
yeah,
side of things? Is that something that you sort
yes,
of look back on and are like, gosh darn it?
yeah, it does bother
It's
me.
not too late, but now you have something cooler going on. So, I mean, anyways, in my humble opinion. So, you're talking about all these corporate experiences. Obviously, you're not necessarily doing that all the time now. So, explain to me like what you liked and did not like about the leaders you came across within that corporate environment.
The leaders I love the most were those who were really open, who would listen, right? Didn't always want to hear themselves talk. I think that's fairly traditional in terms of what we would hope for in good humans. I think
Hmm.
really good leaders also inspire the best in everyone, pull those nuggets of brilliance out and say, go and do, and let me know what you need. Huge. All of those assets are just huge for top performers to really be able to perform is to give them the runway. Let them go.
Right. Don't micromanage.
Yeah. And get them more. Get them resources, get them the team. You want to retain a top performer, empower the shit out of them. Can we swear on this podcast? Like just make
Yes.
everything that we need to have. I mean, I figured knowing you, but I just had to share.
What do you mean? So, do you feel like you came across any leaders in your experience who were in a leadership position who should not have been, and explain like how you think that impacts a team?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely came across those leaders who shouldn't have been leaders. Leaders
Hmm.
that have been demeaning, one to one, especially young in my career when I didn't have the confidence to speak up to that sort of behavior. Leaders
Hmm.
that stood next to me at 10 o'clock at night and said, I don't understand why we're here. And, today in hindsight, as a leader, I would say to them, yeah, I don't understand why we're here because you're actually in charge. So
Hmm.
something was awry long before 10 p.m. at night when we are still at the office, right? And so um, that's interesting to think about now after all the years of experience both you and I have had.
I think about that, and I talk about it quite a bit. Is to like one of the reasons that I pushed into construction is because when I first entered a job site and was around these people who had always been taught were like rough and horrible and, mean to women or whatever, it struck me that I'd had way more negative experiences in boardrooms with people
Mhm.
who are supposed to be in these leadership positions than I ever had on these job sites. I mean, obviously you still have problems when you enter those situations
Right.
sometimes, but if you're comparing them, there's no comparison. Like I had such horrible experiences in the office. And so
Yeah.
that's something that just has always stuck with me, as to like, why are those people leaders and how did they get to those points and
Yeah.
why are we lifting them up?
Yeah.
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 Especially as women, right? Like it's
Especially.
different. It's different for women, especially coming up and as a young woman, understanding like that just because someone is in a leadership role does not mean that you have to respect them.
And I think that's really hard from a generational perspective. For sure, early in my career, there were things said to me in a moment when I was like,
I don't think that's okay.
really? You like the color of my lipstick? And your wife has red hair, so it's a really great color. And like, how is that relevant to anything we need to talk about? Let's
No, none of it
no,
is.
no.
That
You know,
doesn't
but a
work.
lot of that behavior, thank goodness, was okay. Also,
Yeah. Well, and now, I mean, it's starting to get better, but it's almost like now it's disguised as different things, which I mean is like a tangent you could go on. I could go on forever. So talk about you went from your corporate experience and then bam, we're doing Ready Set Pivot. Like, how did that transition happen? Because I think you and I met like right when you were starting RSP. It was like an idea, and there was like maybe 5 or 6 of you that were like
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about it. And you're like, I can't remember who, I think it was Heather who reached out to me originally, and got me on a phone call with you. But
yeah,
explain to me, like, how did that happen, and why did you do it?
yeah. You know, also, I was stalking you, girl. So I was watching all the things that you were doing. And you
I like
definitely,
it. I'm okay with you
we're gonna come
stalking
back.
me.
We're gonna come back to that. Because other cool women need to see other cool women live in their spaces and places. And
100%. Oh,
I
for
remember
sure.
crew super early. And I was also like, this is brilliant because this is exactly where we need that voice.
Yeah, we're like, crew is like almost like RSP, but for construction.
Yeah, yeah, 1,000%. I was like, can we join up? So, you know, for me, I think, and I think this is true and indicative of the women that we serve today. So, no coincidence, right? Because any good founder is helping to solve a problem, and she's likely not the only one out there with that problem. Hence, it becomes a business.
Yep.
My change moment was really the time in which I had been the marketing leader at an enormous health plan within Minnesota. I felt I had done everything I could do for my team. There was a change in leadership. There wasn't forward trajectory from a strategy perspective that I felt I could get on board with.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't going to sell that through in a team that I had really hired, fostered, led, taken from. We have someone who still goes on press checks in this department, but we have no retail, to we win content strategies across the country in digital space. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was an amazing opportunity. And I felt very grateful to be in the right place in time to take that marketing organization to a new place. And then it just became, I think I've done all I can do here. And it probably doesn't do me any good to sit in this space. Now, in hindsight, as a leader, I think the thing I often reflect on is the people that I left, that I made a promise to, and
Yeah.
then left, which is really, really hard for women as we talk to them and they try to change and transition. It's very hard for them to not think of everyone else before themselves.
Oh, for sure. Mm-hmm.
So then, you know, little unbeknownst to me, as I started talking about my story and why I left, all these other women kept showing up and saying, you know, I think I'm done too. Like, I'm not done, but I'm done doing this, because high achievers just want to achieve again. And we call that the DNA of an RSPer. And so I had those 5 or 6 other women around me who all said that to me. They didn't know each other. This is my superpower. I've done it repeatedly throughout my career. I didn't know it was a superpower that I had until later in life, that I get all those people in one room and say, this is why each of you are here. This is the role and voice that you
Mm-hmm.
play that will be hugely instrumental in helping to solve any one problem. And really, that is what created the foundation of what is Ready, Set, Pivot today.
And so, I mean, I know how it went for us when we were creating our group. There's like this point where you have, your little nucleus and you're like, we have an idea. So how did you go from that idea? Because what I'm reflecting on is I came to the fall event last year, right? And I was sitting in this room. How many women were at that event?
300.
Okay, so I'm sitting in this room and I was like towards the back, and you were on stage talking, and I was like, holy shit. Like I had this moment for you. And I think as women, we do that. But like, I was like, holy shit, she did it. Like she actually did it. Like I couldn't even say hi to you barely because it was like everybody was like, oh, Wendy, hug me, touch me, love me. And it was like you were like a celebrity because this is like this was your baby and you like took care of it and you raised it up. And it was this room full of women who you were the nucleus of and you've impacted, right? Like every single woman in that room was like, Wendy, 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 Wendy. And so that's quite a legacy. But like, first it was like that little group of you guys. And so how did you grow it? How did you make that happen? For anybody who might be listening who has an idea and they have big ideas for that, what they want to do with it. Like, how did you make that happen?
Yeah. Well, first, here's something none of us want to hear, yourself included. You have to be patient.
Oh, no. You don't want to do that.
By that, I mean, I think those first 5 and 6 women had networks and people who also felt the way that they felt and the way that I felt. And so we let those individuals tell us how they felt, what they needed. And I know I talked to 80 to 100 people in the first year from our first meeting on March 11th of 2020, the day the NBA closes down. Tom Hanks said he has COVID. We have 42 women in one room at some condo complex, gathering space. And we're like, should we have a hand washing station? And like, what the hell is that? Like, we don't know what's going on in the world yet. And from there, the engagement and attraction grew, but we really did wait and listen. I did 80 to 100 phone interviews because we're in pandemic mode then. We moved to virtual happy hours and we learn as we're going. So we didn't launch a brand. We didn't launch a service offering. We didn't charge anyone anything for that entire first year because we were really listening.
I think it had to have been like June or July of 2020. I think June. And I think you were doing your happy hours by then because you invited me to speak on one of your happy hours. And it was literally 2 days after I got laid off from my job. And I had been completely shell-shocked. And you had me come on and talk about I think it was like just women in leadership and how we stand up for ourselves or whatever. And I just remember sharing that. And I was so like raw at that point and just like a mess, right? I was a big old wound, but also trying to inspire other people. And I just remember feeling so like insulated by all the women on that call, like saying like, this is great what you shared, but also like, I see you, I hear you, and I've been there. And I think that that's really the power of what this group is. For anybody who has not heard of RSP, because you and I are in the Twin Cities, so it's mainly here, right? So explain in the most simplest terms what it looks like and what your goals are for it.
Yeah. Well, Christina, my goal is to change the world.
What?
I mean, for the betterment of women. When you think about the esoteric goal, it's about if you decide tomorrow, you, Christina, you want to do X, that the rest of the planet recognizes the innate skills and talents and awesome that you are and says, surely she has achieved all of these things. She can do that. We are open and will give her permission because that's a real thing. Because there are hiring managers who don't give permission to someone with your skill set to do something over here that you actually haven't on title and paper done over here before. And that's really 100%. Necessary.
Yeah, so true.
And then as the world goes forward, as the labor market changes, I believe that it will be necessary for people to consider people differently. And so Ready, Set, Pivot challenges the universe. This is our vision statement. Challenges the universe to think differently about talented women and help them create new measures of success. I want to help you define what you need. And I want to help the guy across the street hear you when you show up to say, no, this is what I need, this. And yes, by typical standards, am I overqualified for that? I don't know, maybe. But I will tell you that the pace of change of the working world is not what it was when I did that 10 years ago. So we have change there. And then who are you to know what's going on with everything in my world, in my planet, in my life? And if I'm telling you I can achieve this job and you have laid out the construct of expectations relative and for me, and that's what the organization needs, how about if we just go with that? I mean, you can predict that I'm not going to be happy in 2 to 3 years, but then I would also like you to predict that you're not going to lay me off, change strategic direction, get purchased, or the 80 million other things that no corporation should, can, will offer us as a 1,000% stamp either. So
No
it goes
kidding.
both ways. It goes both ways.
Yeah. That's very good timing, I guess, for right now, because I was laid off, ironically, like 2 or 3 months ago, and I got out of that, and it was the first time I found myself in like a job search or transition where I was comfortable saying I deserve a leadership position. And I've been really thinking about that, like why, as a woman, or as a person, really, am I uncomfortable saying like I'm a leader? And
Yeah.
I've been leading and I've been doing these tasks. So why is that uncomfortable for me to say that? And I really think it came down to, for me, just as a woman, always being put into like an expectation. And whether I was putting that expectation on myself because of the way I came up, or if society was putting that expectation on me, but I was just like, well, why am I thinking this? Why can't I just come out and say like, no, I should be a leader, and leaders should be looking at me as their equals? And that's been like a real, and it's part of the reason I started this podcast, like because my path was not normal, and I don't have an MBA, and I haven't been sitting on all these boards everywhere, but I've created a board, and I've created things, and I've led people. And so it's like,
that's proof. That's
so
proof.
there,
Right?
so there. Yeah.
So there. I think it's that, other people have limiting expectations. I think that's the truth of it. Sometimes others can only see us so big, so far. The DNA of an RSPer, the expectations are really high. The conversations we have a lot, I know this is true of you, is we say to one another, should I just lower my expectations? Should I just lower my bar?
Nope.
And then all the RSP women are like, no way. Just keep doing, and whoever you're supposed to fit with, just as you're saying, that will show up eventually, and you'll be the better for it.
I love that. What kind of activities is RSP doing? I know you've got your annual event, so explain to me, like, literally, what are you guys doing?
Yeah. So we are helping people to make change happen for themselves, and then we are also helping to make change happen within the system. So we are, we're a change organization. Who do we do it for? 40 plus, bold, unapologetic, amazing women. Why do we do it? Vision statement. We do experiences designed around our change framework. So the 3 stages of change, what stage you in? What are you thinking about? I think it's always interesting when a woman says to me, yeah, I'm not making change. I don't need RSP right now. Cool. You're change ready. You got that? Like from the job you're sitting in today, or maybe the transition package that you got, you're next. What do you need to take from this moment in time for what you are becoming, right? It goes to my end point. What is my ultimate crafted nirvana? If we've seen anything, we've seen purpose move closer to center within organizations. And then we know that the more I'm working in purpose, the happier I am as a human. So a very transparent conversation with individuals about purpose makes good sense. And we do that primarily through experiences and experience curation. So pop-up happy hours, purpose-driven happy hours within organizations sometimes. Of course, our virtual monthly happy hours, we bring forward guest voices who can help answer those change questions along the way, the big annual event. And then International Women's Day is our system change goal and event. Let's make change in the system. Let's talk about unconscious bias. Let's talk about the hiring manager that's not going to hire you or I because we don't look like the person that should be the leader.
Okay, I want to go on that tangent. I'm going to pull that thread. So let's talk about unconscious bias. So this is actually a topic that I am still trying to wrap my head around, honestly. And I don't know if it's because I'm naive in the fact that like I don't understand how someone can look at one person and say, I'm not going to select that person even though they're qualified or overqualified for this position based on whatever. And I just think I inherently am like, no, people would never do that. And I know that that's naive, but I still to this day, no matter what crazy shit I have been through in my life, I still want to be like, no, people wouldn't do that. Explain to me like I am someone who is very biased. Like how do you think unconscious bias can be undone? Like how can I start to look at things differently, right? If I don't even know I'm doing it.
Yeah. I think the weird nugget in all of this and what you just said is like if I'm extremely biased, that individual often doesn't have that level of self-awareness. So let's just go with hiring managers, myself included. When I look at a hire on paper, it's comfortable. And I'm going to tell you, it's really easy because I got 80 million other things to do as a marketing department leader than just hire. I don't want to do the work that's sitting there, right? So I want to hire someone I know I can trust, who probably looks like me and sounds like me and thinks like me. That is just normal human behavior. And it takes extra work, effort, and time to say, give me those 10 resumes without the name, without the picture, so that I can make a decision that's less biased. This entire, so much, so much of corporate America is built on who we know and who we hire.
Yeah.
It's just the truth of it. So it's looking around you, looking for different ways, different methods to, in this instance, hire differently,
Yeah, that one is just, I know it happens. It's kind of like workforce development within construction, right? Like, I know it's such a huge, huge problem. And it's almost like, how do you even start climbing that mountain to solve that problem? And I think it's just starting. And starting is sometimes the hardest thing. I always talk about how there's leaders at the top of every company, not just in construction, but just across all areas, complaining about the workforce and young people. And my biggest frustration is the level of the amount of complaints and the lack of action to solve the actual problems. And that's tough though, because the people that are the problem aren't the ones that necessarily see themselves as the issue. They see everybody else as the issue.
Right.
So, okay, I'll switch. I'm going to pivot. Pivot. So when you look ahead like 5 to 10 years, first we'll start with RSP, but like when you look ahead like 5 to 10 years, what is, or 20 years, because obviously this is going to be an impactful organization. It's not going anywhere. So what is the goal long term, and how do you eventually step out of it? And what is it like, because eventually that has to happen. I've had to step back from my nonprofit too. And it's sort of like handing off your child at daycare type of like, or whatever. It's weird. So how do you see it growing, and how do you see like an amazing thing happening with it? Like, what would that look like to you, even more amazing?
Yeah, for me, it would look like, I'm sure you follow them, the female quotient, Christina, like as a movement and the things that they do, and they're at Dabo and they're talking about issues and making change happen. And then I think about, so put that over here. Then I think about organizations like Him and Hers, the health organization that offers a product. I think that RSP offers people a way to advocate and make change happen for themselves that is a movement and a product. It really is. I see that on TV as a thing now that I go, yeah, okay, I guess I'm ready to do something. So I'll call them or I'll get that resource, that
Yeah.
Angie's this sort of resource to help me do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because we really want to fire start that change within someone. And as a change organization, what better than, and for me as an energizer to be able to help people do that. So I mean, I see that we want to start this fall with road shows in different new geographies, kicking off what is the movement of RSP, instilling change within women. And I want that 5 years. I mean, it will be national, or I have to go because I just don't have the patience. I just don't have it. I just don't have the patience for anything longer.
Mm-hmm. And so then thinking about yourself as sort of, well, as the founder and as that sort of nucleus and like the big idea person, what do you want your legacy to look like? You know, not just with RSP, but like in general, like how are you hoping to impact people around you?
The unexpected awesome that I think can be the legacy is some of what I already received today in gratitude from the women that we serve. That comes to me completely unexpected. I'm sure you've gotten these notes. I'm sure you've gotten these drop offs. The things that women say to me about how RSP has impacted their life, quite honestly, if I had to quit it all tomorrow, would be enough to satisfy the feeling that I have done something that makes people feel really amazing. And that was not what I set out. That wasn't part of the plan.
No.
I guess that's the win.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you think about, like I asked you earlier, like, are you sad you didn't do that agency side of advertising? But like maybe that just wasn't your destiny. Like this really feels like I just keep remembering it was like a core moment for me, like just seeing you up on stage and be like, holy shit, she did this, you know. And some of the people that were speaking and the people at my table even that I met and sat and talked with, every single person like impacted by Wendy. And you know, whether they had met you directly or somebody who you were working with had said, hey, you need to come to this, it's just that legacy that it doesn't happen by accident, but it's certainly not like you woke up, like you grew up saying like, I'm going to start an organization for women, you know,
Right.
and I'm going to impact hundreds if not thousands of women. And you know, and eventually, you know, as you keep going, tens of thousands of women. Like what a cool feeling. Like that has to just like, you have to just fall asleep every night, be like, hey, like this is great, look what I did.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what I fall asleep thinking, but like more like, did I post that? Should I say this? What's next?
Welcome to my world, like everything.
Right?
Did I say that? Was I supposed to say that? Is that okay?
Yeah, you're just like, you don't know. I think the thing everyone has to take solace in, and like I thank you for reflecting on me being on stage and that feeling, because I haven't heard that before, and it feels amazing to hear you say, I created those very sorts of experiences for others, for
Mhm.
corporations, right? I had 500 people in a room who had an amazing time at my big corporate event that had an outstanding budget. So I had the faith and belief that I could do the scale thing. Then the other piece of it, no, I didn't wake up and say someday I want to run a women's empowerment organization. But along this journey, I've just kept thinking, and you know this, just do the right thing. Just every
Mhm.
time. Every time you make a decision, just do what you know is right, that needs to happen. And guess what? There's ready, set, pivot. It needs to happen. And this is what people are telling me. And so therefore I'm going to be their voice. And that's what needs to happen.
Was there like a moment for you, whether it was, you know, years ago or recently, where you just kind of sat in it and said, you realized people were listening, or you realized that you were a leader? Like, was there a time or like an experience that you just were like, oh my God, people are actually it like the first time I ever got asked to speak, because I've been writing for years, as you know,
Mhm.
and the first time I got asked to do a keynote speaking engagement, I had never done any speaking engagements, period. And I just remember this woman asking me to come speak to their group, and it was like 500 people. And I was like, I don't think so. And she's like, we will give you $4,000. And I was like, holy shit, I will be there. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but yes, I will be there. And I remember like having this sort of like hanging up the phone and being like, they like think I'm a leader to the point where they want to pay me to come like spew this shit that I write about on LinkedIn. I mean, it wasn't perfect, but they paid me anyways. And it's just kind of evolved since then. But that was like a moment for me where I was like, holy Hannah, I am a leader. And that's just kind of expanded. And it does require you to continually pump yourself up in certain degrees too. But was there a moment for you?
I definitely felt a tinge of that on stage at the fall experience this year because it was the biggest forum to date. But I think the first time I felt that relative to RSP was really in that first year, those 5 and 6 women that came together to form what is the brand that you see today.
Mm-hmm.
Each of them are so uniquely different that having each of their attention and engagement and voice as a part of creating and being that nucleus, I think that's humbling and honorable to think that they kept showing up for that.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Yeah, it's so validating, right? Like when you feel like you have these good ideas or you feel like there's something special about the way that you're looking at things, and then really smart people come in around you and they're like, yeah, we see it too. And you're like, oh man, I'm not crazy. And maybe, I mean, I think founders in general are a little crazy in general. Like that's just, you have to be a little weird to be like, I'm going to create something from nothing. And then you guys are going to just all come along and it's going to be great. And I just think you have to be a little crazy to do that. But there is just such like a peaceful, like validating moment when you're supported. Right. And that's the next thing I want to talk about is the opposite of that. Because I want to get your opinion. One of the things that I've struggled with, and I know a lot of women struggle with, is the other side of women. And when we aren't supportive to each other and how horrible that can be, because the times that I feel like I've truly been sabotaged in my career, it has always been women. And I don't understand that. And I would love for you to speak to that and sort of how you would like to change that or how you stop that from happening within the RSP community.
Yeah. I'm going to disappoint you here that I feel like within my professional career, I hadn't really been sabotaged. I might have felt a lot of good. This amazing other female leader made me a better performer because they were so great. But I feel like when people talk about the area of conversation that you're going to, I hear others talk about it all the time, but I don't feel like I have indicatively been that I've been a part of it as much. I think the other thing, so I don't have a core moment or a thing there. I think it's my job to help facilitate. I mean, at some point that conversation has to go on stage. It's come up so many times. We've got to talk about it. When I think about my business, I think I am competition to and for no one. It is up to that founder to define their value prop. And if someone comes to me versus you, that's just what we offer. I really don't care about, join Team Women, join Chief, join whatever suits you and fits you. It's my job to tell you who I am so that you know where you belong and whether or not that's here.
For 100%.
Yeah,
we say the same thing about Crew because there's so many nonprofits and associations working on workforce development, and people are always like, oh, are you in competition with so and so? And it's like, no, the problem is big enough for all of us. There is plenty to do.
Yeah, everyone's be a part of everything. Everyone's doing great stuff. It's all for the greater good. I think and that's a lesson for me from marketing, even when you think about the biggest health plan. We're just really focused on this is our value prop. This is what we offer. These are our strengths and competitive advantage. And so I think that naturally carries for me over into this space. Just go down the path you're going on. It's fine.
The other thing I wanted to hit on was at your event in the fall, I was happy and surprised and also impacted greatly by the discussion around mental health.
Mm.
And I wanted to know sort of how you decided to push into that, why you think it's important that women are open about mental health. And obviously, Natasha Bowman was there, and she impacted me in a huge way, talking about her mental health stuff. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, and that actually made me feel like I could talk about it. So that was
Mm.
very impactful for me. And I want to kind of hear your perspective on why you think it's important that we're open and forward with mental health.
Relative to change, I think for the people that we generally serve, I'll also call them control freaks. This is a really crazy time.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, what should my job be? I'm reevaluating my life. I might try some new things. What? I mean, women are always dying for me to like tell them. I've had women say, could you just tell me what to do? And I'm like, you know
Nope.
me, I have no problem telling people what to do, but not in this instance. You
Mm-hmm.
have to decide. And so I think there is a natural, uncomfortable, new space, unsettling, mental health, potential issues unlike ever before when you come into serious change. And
Mm-hmm.
so bringing Natasha in and her life experience and all of the strategies that she shared, I think it was natural. And I was reminded of again today because, of course, I'm working on the final content for this year's event. And I'm like, where is mental health going to show up? Because it has to show up in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Just the truth of what any one of us deal with during change.
Yep. It's I think especially given what we've gone through in the past 4 years and how crazy just in general society is. And then throw into the mix having to have a strong career and do all the things. Women just, we feel like we have to do all the things, and
Mm-hmm.
the level of multitasking that's happening. I always tell people that I'm never going to answer my phone most likely when they call, because I'm probably doing 4 things at the same time and don't necessarily have the bandwidth to look at my phone. And I just wonder, long term, how we maintain that without losing our absolute minds. And I don't know if it's feasible, but we keep doing it. How do you feel about that?
I feel like what I'm seeing is that those evaluating where their next is, particularly at the age stage that we serve, they
Mm-hmm.
are taking a hot minute to consider less is more.
Yeah.
And we get stronger, right? We get stronger and have the ability to say to people, unlike ever before, I don't have time for that.
Yeah. I always have, I have young women reach out to me all the time because I'm a single mom. And these girls are like in their early 20s, and they're like, how do I have a career and have kids? And it's like, you can do all the things. It's just a matter of reprioritizing your life and what's important. Because I thought I was busy when I was in my early 20s, but I was not busy at all. I had all sorts of free time.
Like, I
Um,
think about the things we used to spend time doing then. I was like, there's a
yeah.
song right now that I listen to that says something about like just blowing a day, just like letting a day blow by and like doing, and I was like, yeah, there were days.
There were
There
days
were
where we
days
just
we
like, yeah,
did that.
laid in bed all day or
Right,
like sat by
right,
a pool.
right.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, next question.
Yeah.
I think I just have a couple more for you. So I don't believe in regrets. I have a feeling you're not big on
Mhm,
like regrets either,
mhm.
but that doesn't mean there aren't things that I wouldn't do differently given the opportunity. So if you're, talking to like young Wendy, or you're talking to like a young woman like yourself, starting out right now, what advice would you give them, or what things do you wish you had done differently or put more thought into?
Relative to this conversation, when I think about leadership, I wish I would have thought more deeply about standing in someone else's shoes before I spoke or acted. That's because I'm a
Okay.
quick decision maker. I have huge conviction and I'm impatient. And
Yes.
so 9 times out of 10, I am sure I just brushed onto something that struck someone else in a very different way and in a way that I was not accounting for. And I think I regret making that person feel the way that I had not intended.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more conscious of that going forward.
You and I are so similar. Someone like told me that like a few years ago that I steamroll conversations. And I just remember being like, but I'm so sensitive and empathetic and all these things. And I had to sort of redefine who I actually am in that moment because I'm not that sensitive. I'm sensitive in certain situations, but it is true. Some of us, I totally understand where you're coming from, but like that advice of maybe waiting a beat before you speak or thinking about how what you're about to say might impact the people in the room, right? Or others that might hear about the conversation. That's hard, especially for women like you and I who I mean, I assume like I feel like I've always had to kind of fight for where I'm at or kind of like
Mm-hmm.
yell to be heard or stand up for myself, right? And be a little scrappy. And when you're like that, you almost feel like you have to be like that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think, yeah.
that's good advice.
Yeah.
And then what are things that you feel like you've done just really well? Like what are you most proud of, like as far as like how you've carried yourself?
The ironic, converse side of what we just talked about is that I'm really proud of, like, I just acted. I just
Yeah.
did. My department head was embezzling. Cool. Whatever. I'm going to go. You guys need me here? Great. I can pinch hit all day long and let me be in my happy place. I have never regretted. See, I've never regretted just acting because more times than not, it's also what put me in this chair.
Right. And is there anything else before we wrap up that you just like, say you had like just a thought to impart for everybody that would ever hear anything that you just want to say, like, for me, it's like, don't be an asshole. But like,
Mm.
like what kind of message do you want to share with people?
This comes from the core of just listening to women, not listen to themselves perhaps enough every day. Just get on with doing what is necessary for you.
Mm-hmm.
Because as hard as we are, as edgy as we may be, as guilty as we might feel, I bet you're still not going to be selfish enough to give it all to you, Christina. So be, this is completely inappropriate. Be SAF, be selfish as fuck. Because I
Mm-hmm.
have to tell that to women so that they get on with what they need to be better over here anyway. So just start being a little bit more selfish.
What? I mean, there's so much truth to you can't pour from an empty cup. And so many of us are just giving and giving and giving. And then we
Who are
wonder.
you giving to? And for what reason? Like,
And then you're just like wondering, like, why do I feel like shit? Why am I tired? Like, why am I not where I want to be? And it's because you're not reflecting on what you need.
that, and it's the world will change around you tomorrow and you actually have little control over that. So recognize that you're not actually in control of all of it. The job will end, a pandemic will happen, the world's going to move faster, AI is here, figure out your place within it, and just know that it's all going to change.
We are fucked.
Right? We can call each other and we can deal with the bullshit together, which is the whole point.
The whole point is surround yourself with good people so that when the bottom falls out of everything, you have people to reach out to, but also just have faith in yourself. I love that. That gave me like some warm fuzzies. I love it. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here. I appreciate you and I love that conversation. And now I can't wait to see you in person so I can give you like a full on snuggle because I just feel like I know you so much better now. So, mission accomplished. And we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for being on today. And I will see you soon. Mwah.
Thanks for the opportunity.